Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. And I've put together the top 7 key market drivers I look at when analyzing a real estate market. Go to sethferguson.org to download your free copy. Our guest today has acquired 16 units in 2.5 years, focusing on value-add multifamily and the BRRRR strategy. He also owns a construction company and holds his real estate license. Joseph Cornwell joins us today. Joseph, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. So let's get right into things. Tell us about your real estate goals right now.
My current goals, immediate goals, are to acquire a 12 to 30 unit. That's kind of what my next asset I'm looking for. And long-term goals are to scale up a lot higher than that. But I have a lot more defined goals for my next year, 2 years. So yeah, that's my next step.
Yeah. And I'm always curious, like some people concentrate on dollar volume, others concentrate on number of units. Why did you decide to concentrate on the unit for your goal?
Well, my initial goal 4 years ago was to have 20 units, and I thought that would take me 10 years. Yeah. Well, here we are 2.5 years later, and I have 16 units. So I've been able to expedite that a little bit faster than I kind of imagined possible. And obviously, it's been a pretty steep learning curve the last 4 or 5 years since I initially got interested in buy and hold. But the reason why I have the 12 to 30 units specifically in mind is because that's kind of where the Cincinnati market, I could take down that size of deal at this point myself. And then obviously if I go any larger, I have other potential money partners I can bring in. So that's why I'm in that range. And it's hard to find a deal in that range. There's just not a lot of inventory. So that's why I kind of expanded it to that 12 to 30. It gives me a little bit more opportunities.
Yeah. And looking back 2.5 years ago when you first got started, what was the catalyst that actually made you buy your first deal?
Well, I've always been interested in real estate, so I kind of got into it accidentally by a live-in flip. Back in 2011, 12 is when I bought my first home. I was very young. I was 21, so not, most 21-year-olds don't buy the first home, but I did. Yeah. And through just forcing equity in the market at the time, as we all know, was kind of starting to climb up. When I was able to sell that home and buy my second personal home, I realized, wow, I made quite a bit of money. I made quite a bit of equity here through my own renovations. So that really kind of piqued my interest in real estate. And it wasn't until 2015 and when I really kind of educated myself, started, reading business books, real estate books, and got the bug to define what I wanted to do. I looked at wholesaling, I looked at flipping, I looked at all the kind of real estate niches, and then buy and hold made the most sense to me, having other full-time jobs. And I didn't want another job, so I didn't want to flip. I didn't want to wholesale. I'm still interested in those things, and they may be part of the plan in the future, but right now buy and hold is definitely my niche.
Yeah. And at what point did you focus on the smaller multifamily properties? Because you've done some BRRRRs and then you've done the multifamily.
Yeah, I think the multifamily, it just made sense to me. I looked at single families. I think single families definitely have a little bit lower barrier of entry, and I think they're easier to get out of if things don't go well or if you want to get out of them quickly. So I think there is some upside to single family for some people, but my strategy's been long-term hold. Everything I buy, I plan on keeping unless something, crazy changes. So multifamily just made a lot more sense. Obviously, the economies of scale, multiple units under one roof. You can go to one place to do multiple sets of maintenance and repairs. All those things that multifamily provides. So even at a planning and education stage, I kind of knew that was the route I wanted to go. And I think as I continue to scale up in unit count per property, it's going to continue to benefit me.
Yeah. And what did you have to change from how you thought about real estate, the asset, going from those single family BRRRRs to a multifamily property?
Well, it was actually all of my buy and holds have been multifamily. So
okay.
From 2 to 6 unit, I have two units and 2 6 units, and that makes up the 16. But just the mindset to want the multiple units in one place. I think that was kind of done prior to my first purchase. But if a really good single family deal would have came up for my first deal, I probably would have purchased it. And even today, if something makes sense and I have the capital ready, I'll take it. It's more of what's the best deal that I can find at the time when I'm in an acquisition mode.
for sure. And looking at your business today, what would you say is your biggest challenge right now?
I think deal flow, finding deals. I mean, as you mentioned, I'm a real estate agent, so I have a really good network here in Cincinnati. So I have probably as many deal flow opportunities as anybody in the investing space here locally, and it's still really, really hard to find a deal. So the only thing I don't do that some people probably have an advantage on is I don't do a lot of direct to owner marketing. I don't do a lot of direct mail. I don't do a lot of cold calling. Like there's a lot of guys that do that on a very high scale and high volume. That's not me at this point. But outside of that, I think I have as many opportunities as anybody, and it's still just really hard for everybody I know in this space to find a deal. So that's definitely the hardest part at this point.
Yeah. And have you noticed that really get harder over the 2.5 years you've been really involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody's had to kind of shift their strategies. 2.5 years ago, you could still go on the MLS, and if you really spent your days hammering out MLS leads, you could still find a deal. Now, even if you do that, you may not. I look at the MLS every day. I have all the automatic notifies for all the areas that I look in, and I've expanded my area of investment a lot. When I first started, I was literally in a square mile town. That's where I wanted to buy, and I do have 2 properties there. But it's when you limit yourself that way, it's extremely hard to find a good deal. So I've expanded. I've kind of broadened my horizons to what sort of asset class I'll buy. What type of neighborhood, what type of building, and it's still, even with that expansion, it's hard to find a good deal right now.
Yeah. But looking back when you first got started, do you think having that more laser focus was important for you just to stay?
Yeah. And so for me, a little background story, I'm actually still a full-time police officer, and I do all these other things, but the little square mile town that I was looking in was where I'm a police officer. So it was for me and my comfort and being kind of a control freak, like to know I'm going to be there every day in that town, keeping an eye on tenants, keeping an eye on my property. Even though I didn't live there, it was just a comfort level for me to jump in. So that's why I looked at such a laser focused market like that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure that there was a lot of cruiser traffic going back and forth.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On the street. That's awesome. That's almost built-in. That's built-in security.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what sort of routines and rituals have you developed that have helped make you successful so far in real estate?
I think just in general, I think building systems. So as you mentioned, I'm a real estate agent. So I have systems that are involved with, how I generate client leads, the process in which I buy and sell properties for my clients and follow up with them and do the paperwork and those things. With the construction business, the same thing. Managing contractors is probably one of the most difficult things about this business, in my opinion, especially when you're doing the value add multifamily and the BRRRR strategy. So you'll probably see as a pattern of mine is that pretty much everything I've done has been out of necessity. So I literally got my real estate license because I worked with a lot of terrible agents that knew nothing about real estate investing, right? So I had some great residential agents that had helped me buy and sell my personal houses, but they didn't know anything about buy and hold multifamily. So when a good deal would come up and they say, "Oh yeah, we can get you in next week to go look at it," it's like, well, it was sold 3 days ago. So like it doesn't really work that way, at least here in Cincinnati's market. So I went and got my license out of necessity. I built a construction company from the ground up out of necessity because I worked with a lot of terrible contractors, and I got money taken from me, and I had tools taken from me, and I had all the worst horror stories you've probably heard dozens or hundreds of times. And out of necessity, I said, well, how can I fix this, and then how can I help other people in my same situation? And that's why I got my agent's license. That's why I built a construction company. So the systems involved with those to make them run as efficiently as I can, still having another full-time job, I think is my kind of best practice and routine.
Mm-hmm. And what sort of tips would you give somebody? Let's say they're brand new and they're taking down a project that needs some contractor work. What advice would you give somebody entering that space for the first time?
Yeah, I think the first step is to get referrals from hopefully people or trust. And if you don't know or trust anybody in the real estate space, well, then you probably need to network more before you buy a deal. Now, if you already have a deal, then that's probably your first step is network, go to meetups, get on some of the social, the real estate social medias and find people in your market doing deals, and they should be able to give you good referrals.
Yeah.
And then that gives you at least a baseline of trust. Now, granted, my first contractor was a really highly referred person that still was terrible. So that doesn't necessarily bulletproof the situation, but it's a good first step. And then once you have somebody working, never pay out the full project until it's done. That was another mistake I made. No matter how much they come to you and say, I need more money to pay my guys, you need to have defined payments set up prior to the scope of work. So it's like, if they come to you every Friday asking for money when they haven't finished anything, well, then you need to tell them, and you need to stay firm to your agreement, finish the, X, Y, Z, and you'll get paid X, Y, Z, and that was another mistake I made in the beginning. And those are some things you can do just to protect yourself and actually go and inspect the work. Sometimes my contractor would call me and say, hey, we did this, this, and this. And, I'm like, it's 30 minutes away. I don't really feel like going to check. And I would just send them a check. And that's another mistake I made. Being naive, being too nice in this business can definitely come back to bite you. And I think a lot of people in real estate are good, genuinely nice people that are just trying to make a better life for themselves and their families and their communities. And when you do that, people can take advantage of it.
For sure. And how do you detail that scope of work? Because I know that's something where a lot of people, they're just very wishy-washy with what has to get done, and then that's where problems. So do you have like a bullet list of exactly what has to?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, I was definitely a lot more formalized than that because I my level of comfort, right? Now I can kind of go in with a piece of paper and say, make some notes, and I kind of know exactly what we're doing, and I know exactly what the work entails. But in the beginning, I had some templates that I literally, I think I just Googled them, or I found them on a website or something, and they're great templates you can go through, and you and your contractor can sit there. I mean, and some of these templates get as detailed as you want. I mean, talking about like what the code of the paint on the trim in that room. I mean, there's some like extremely overly detailed scope of works that probably aren't necessary, but you definitely want some sort of written agreement, even if it's not legally binding. And I can explain more on that if you want, but even if it's not legally binding, there's something for you guys to refer to when, 6 months from now, if you're in a long rehab, they can go back and say, well, no, that wasn't the agreement on, this XYZ work. And you have something to refer to that you both looked at and signed. I had all that in the beginning. It still didn't really protect me as far as legally or civilly, but I think it's a good baseline, especially if you're uncomfortable and you're a brand new investor.
For sure. Well, let's get into a keystone deal. So a deal that made a big impact on you and your business. Is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think the last burr I did, which was another duplex in Deer Park, which was that small town I was talking about. It was probably my best deal, but it was also probably my most challenging deal. So it was just a duplex house. I actually got the lead off market from my police officer job. I actually got called there for somebody that had broke a window, and the lady thought somebody had broke in, but turned out it was an inherited house that had been vacant for 18 months. And she really just wanted to get rid of it. I mean, she was literally sobbing to me when I was there on my police call. So I got her phone number. I said, hey, when I get off work, let me call you back and I'll see if I can help you. And initially my thought was, hey, maybe I can list this for her and try to sell it, because Deer Park's a hot market. Even in the, it was basically a hoarder house, completely dilapidated. I still thought she could sell it quickly. So when I called her and she kind of threw out what she wanted to get out of it, I'm like, you know what, that could be a really good deal. So we ended up working it out. I got it under contract at $39,000, which was very low. So it was a good deal in that sense. A typical updated duplex here goes for 160 to 200. So, even at 39, even in its horrible condition, I knew it would work out to be a really good deal. And I ended up putting, let me see here, almost 60,000, maybe a little bit more into it, which was a little over my initial budget, but I had to put two new separated HVAC systems in. Basically from the foundation up, it was rebuilt. So it was my biggest renovation given the size of the property. And but I just did my refi, and it actually appraised at 180. Nice. And I was able to pull out after closing costs like 53,000. So it ended up being a really, really good burr deal. So that was like after paying off my entire construction loan, purchase price, and everything I had into it, I was able to pull out 53 in equity and keep 25% in equity in the deal.
Yeah. So. And do you use any hard money at all, or do you like self-fund everything?
Well, I didn't. So that one was actually, I have a good partnership with a local bank here, Park National Bank. They actually might be a national bank, but they have a lot of local branches here in Cincinnati. And I've just done a lot of deals with them, and I have a lot of my clients that I send through them. So we have a good relationship in that way. They're a commercial lender. And they did a commercial construction loan for me. So it was just a 20% down, which obviously on 39 was like 7,000. It was pretty low. And then they actually just straight funded 80% of the construction costs. So
Nice.
I didn't have to even put anything down on that. Obviously, I just, whatever the difference was, I had to pay out of pocket. But so it was a really nice loan. It was like 5%. I mean, it's about as cheap as construction money as you could find. So that worked out really well.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, tell us about, you alluded to a story where your tools went missing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Give us a worst case scenario.
Yeah. So my first deal was another duplex here in Deer Park. That was my first deal, 2.5 years ago. And the first contractor I hired, again, off of a friend referral. So thank you to that friend. But anyway, he ended up, I think he had some drug issues. I think, obviously I'm a police officer, so I'm familiar with that kind of scene. And, I think he was using opioids or heroin or something to that extent, but when he would show up, he was a great worker. So like the quality of his work was fantastic, but he would only show up like once a week. So he was not reliable. He put me way behind schedule, and he was the type of guy that would, come in and work for 4 hours, like on a Wednesday. And then every Friday he was hitting me up for a check, so he was very bad at managing his time and his life. And I ended up having to fire him, and I had paid about $3,500 up front in work that wasn't completed. And when I fired him, he ended up taking like all of my stuff that was there, a lot of my stuff that was there. And I was able to, ultimately through the police officer angle, get my stuff back. But, the $3,500, I would have had to take him to civil court, even though we had a completely binding contract for every single detail. Like I said, it was one of those really detailed, scope of works. And I thought, oh, I'm totally protected, right? Well, the problem is, after talking to a few civil trial attorneys, it would have cost me probably $10,000 to get my $3,500 back if I won, and it could have taken 2 years. Yeah. So it's like, at the end of the day, unless you have a massive, like, 6-figure plus rehab agreement, unfortunately, just be wary that you're probably not protected from a civil standpoint, even if you have a contract, because at the end of the day, it's going to cost you more to get your money back than you're going to get back.
Yeah, so you're better off just focusing on the next deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And I did the math, and it was simple that, what, he won this one, and, good luck to him, and I'm moving on with better contractors. So
yeah,
that was definitely a rough opening experience for my first project.
Yeah, for sure. So, how has getting into real estate changed your life so far?
Well, I think it's kind of changed my entire trajectory of life, meaning that, 7-8 years ago when I first became a police officer, I thought I would be a cop for 25 or 30 years, and that was going to be my life. And part of what motivated me to get into real estate was looking around, and there was a lot of 40, 50, almost 60-year-old police officers that were overweight, unhealthy, and almost none of them were happy. They'd been divorced 3 or 4 times because, being a cop is a high divorce field. And it's like, I looked at that and said, I don't want, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, I don't want that. So I started looking for ways to change my life and have financial freedom and have the ability to choose when and how and where I work if I want to. And real estate was the catalyst for me to do that, and kind of the vehicle for me to do that. So, I think I'm on the path to do that. My goal right now is to be able to leave in 2021. So that'll, get me out of the police field. And it's not that I hate it. I really enjoy it. I enjoy the career. I enjoy the profession. But it's just not the lifestyle that I want. That's the main issue. And I think the real estate and my businesses that I've started and have been working in, I think those will transition and take over that. And initially, my initial goal, like I said, was to get those unit counts where even if I never work another day again, I can pay my bills. Now it's not what I want for the rest of my life, but it's a baseline of security where I only have to work when and how I choose.
Yeah. So, 2021, you're real estate full-time, doing, another 10 years from now, where do you see your businesses going?
Well, so part of my long-term business goals are to create an umbrella company that encompasses the construction business I already have, a brokerage, so getting my broker's license, not just my agent's license, and then having actual investment focused agents working with and under me, and then having a property management as part of that. So that's kind of like the three tiered business model that I'm looking to do all in one house, because no one here in Cincinnati does that. And when I get calls from California and New York clients who want to buy property here, those are the three things they want, right? So I'm hoping to be able to provide those services to people here locally, but obviously out of state people who don't have the boots on the ground, so to speak. So that's my long-term business model. And that's what I want to accomplish in the next couple of years, is having all those things, running smoothly. And as far as my investments, I don't have a set, it's not like, okay, if I get to 500 units, I'm done. It's not, I don't really have a set defined goal. I think is, I have a passion for the investment side of the business. I enjoy providing services to my tenants. I enjoy, buying really crappy buildings and making them look great, and kind of uplifting the community in that way. So I have a passion that I don't think is going to go away. So I think as long as I'm finding good deals and real estate and the tax benefits and all these things continue, then I'll keep investing for the rest of my life. But I definitely want to scale up into the 100 units or more. That's kind of just a vague, goal.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on in a year, and then you can let us know all the cool stuff you're doing.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, if somebody's looking to get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
Probably the best way is my email, and it's jcornwell, CORNWELL @realtyonestop.com. That's all spelled out. So REALTYONESTOP.
Perfect. Well, Joseph, just want to say thanks so much for taking the time today and sharing those stories about the tools going missing and all that stuff.
I appreciate having me. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.